We've done a lot of work already about the combine. Like I said, Lions on SI, you can see every single position group that we've done in regards to players to watch. Information's there. Podcasts we've done. You can go to YouTube, see all the videos and the early talks. Now, I just want to get your sense because we all know the names of the guys that are key that will potentially be there at 28 and 60. We know the edge rushers, the offensive linemen. We know where to look. Now, starting with defense. Day two, day three, guys, as we observe what's going on, as the players talk, who are some names that people must pay attention to as fits that the Lions could pay attention to because they could look deeper in the draft, look to schools that maybe are outside the box as well in regards to talent. They could look to Boston College, look out east, look out west as well. But bottom line, the higher end players are from the SEC and the Blue Bloods, but later on, there's some depth along that defensive
Mhm.
front that you can get cornerbacks as well, linebackers as well. Who are a couple names, three, four names, or people that have come across your watch list that, hey, when the time comes, they start working out, DOC better be watching.
Yeah, so if you're talking about guys defensively, one name I want you to keep an eye on is Western Michigan's Bilal Kone. Now, I know that my Central fellow CMU alumni may not be super happy with me mentioning a guy from Western, but the point is that this guy's skill set transcends the rivalry. When I was doing my research, this is a name I first came upon. I'm a big fan of John Gruden and the new endeavor he's on at Barstool Sports, and he's had a bunch of different draft prospects come in, and Bilal Kone from Western Michigan was one of them. And right away, you're impressed with his frame. He's a long, lanky cornerback who possesses the kind of athleticism needed to play corner in the Lions' defensive scheme. You talk about a guy who's had some production. He kind of bounced around at the collegiate level. He's a junior college product. And then went to Indiana State for a year and then to Western Michigan for a couple of seasons to finish off his collegiate career. And Bilal Kone is a name that may not go off the board on day two, and he's probably right now suited for mid to late day three just because he's not the most familiar name. But I think that he has a chance to show his testing as a way of his portraying his athleticism to scouts. And I think that if he has a good week in Indianapolis, this is a name that could start to climb draft boards based solely on what he possesses from a physical trait perspective and the way he could develop into being a standout player defensively. I really, really like the potential of Bilal Kone. Another name, Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma, a guy who just fits the profile. When you talk about physical linebackers, and SEC, Oklahoma in the SEC now, so he's a guy who's been exposed to some of those top tier talents. And what that Oklahoma defense did to Alabama when those two teams played, I mean, that just pops off charts for me. And Stutzman, obviously, a big part of that defense throughout his career at Oklahoma. I really like the physicality that he plays with, the toughness. His pass coverage didn't grade out super well via PFF. But there are some things about the way he plays the pass that you can work with. And I think that Danny Stutzman is probably a day two guy. But again, a physical guy. Seems like he's a leader of that group. And I really, really like Danny Stutzman in reviewing his tape over the last couple of weeks. Another guy that's been working out with Coach Gruden as well. So those guys are getting good leadership from one of, a Super Bowl winning coach. So those are a couple of defensive names that have caught my eye. Obviously, there's a ton out there. Oklahoma has a really solid safety who's adept at taking the ball away. Kansas cornerback Mello Dotson is another guy that's had a ton of interceptions and a ton of production, probably slated for day three as well. I could go on and on. I love looking at the day two, day three names. And yeah, there's so many good prospects. I'll have to send you a list after we get off air so you can check them all out when you're down in Indianapolis.
Yeah, no, defense is key. I think that that's very important when you look at what this line. I mean, every time we talked about today on Sunday evening, when I'm recapping comments that people are saying, you put out as you went, you started defense with your previews, and then you went offense. As you went wide receiver, running back, quarterback, people are like defense, defense. It's like, guys, Brad Holmes is going to target and have names on his board that are on the offense, so it's always good to pay attention to who's out there. So I'm curious to see in regards to some defensive players that are going to shine. And it's always key to pay attention because there's going to be some steals, and that's going to be important as you recognize that, hey, the Lions found Makai Wingo last year later, they found Christian Mahogany later, and so some of these picks later on are going to be very important. Anyone else stick out? Athleticism, maybe at a spot people aren't looking at, maybe linebacker or safety that jump off the page as well.
I don't have my list in front of me, but I will say that the safety from Oklahoma, Billy Bowman, is awesome. I mean, he plays super hard. He's kind of an undersized guy, but a ton of production on the ball, a bunch of interceptions playing for the Sooners, and really just kind of plays with a mean streak from the defensive back position. That Oklahoma defense, man, they took their lumps this past year. Oklahoma kind of struggled in their first year in the SEC, but they did have some players on that defense, man. I really liked what he has to offer. So, and then obviously you go down the line with linebackers, and there's going to be good players regardless of round or position. Carson Schlesinger has really climbed the ladder, so he's a little bit more of a household name nowadays. But that was somebody who I like just in watching different Big Ten games. Obviously, with UCLA being in the Big Ten now, you turn on a Big Ten game, and he's just right in the middle of all the action. He had hundreds of tackles in his collegiate career, just a really tough kid as well. So, yeah, I mean, there's names all over the place, and there's good players on defense throughout this draft. I think the edge class, the defensive tackle class, both pretty deep. And there's good players just about everywhere you look. So I'm excited to see them all compete in Indianapolis and show off their physical abilities and go from there as we continue to evaluate.